The following review contains significant plot spoilers. Please watch at your own risk.
May I cut in? You should have told me your wife was here.
Do you come here often?
It's no good you trying to escape, Mr. Bond.
I don't want to escape. Strange as it may seem, I've grown accustomed to your face.
Why don't you come with us quietly?
You don't seem to understand. You see, I enjoy my dancing. Do you mind if my friend sits this one out? She's just dead.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to my James Bond 007 review series. This time around we will be looking at the fourth official Bond adventure, Thunderball, released in 1965 and starring Sean Connery as James Bond. Before we get into the review, let me talk a bit about the film's history. Thunderball was originally supposed to be the first James Bond film. However, there was a lawsuit between Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, and two screenwriters named Kevin McClory and Jack Whittingham, who contributed to the original story of Thunderball. The lawsuit was eventually settled and Thunderball became the fourth Bond film. Kevin McClory would later produce an unofficial Bond film entitled Never Say Never Again, which is basically a remake of Thunderball. As a bonus, I may review that film and the other two of unofficial Bonds after Skyfall's release. Thunderball's plot is pretty straightforward and includes the return of the criminal organization Spectre, led by a mysterious man known only as Number One. We won't find out this man's real name until the next film. Thunderball has a really great pre-title sequence, probably one of my favorites in the entire series actually, which shows Bond assassinating Spectre operative Number 6, Colonel Jacques Bouvard, at a chateau in presumably France. Bond escapes by using a jetpack and his Aston Martin DB5, which is returning from Goldfinger for a short cameo. We are then treated to the film's title song, sung by Tom Jones. I used to hate the song when I was a kid, but it has really grown on me in the last few years. After the PTS, we see Bond at a health clinic called Shrublands, where he meets a mysterious man named Count Lippy, played by Guy Dolman. After an attempt on Bond's life by Lippy, he discovers a dead man known as Francois Derval, played by Paul Stacino. Derval was a French NATO pilot deployed to fly aboard on a Vulcan loaded with 2 atomic bombs for a training mission. We find out that he was murdered by Angelo Palazzi, also played by Stacino, a man working for Spectre to take Derval's place. Angelo has his face surgically altered to look like Derval. Anyways, Angelo sabotages the Vulcan and sinks it near the Bahamas. He is killed by Spectre Number 2, Emilio Largo, played by Adolfo Shelley, the main villain of the film, for trying to extort more money than offered to him. Largo and his men retrieve the atomic bombs, and Spectre demands 100 million in uncut diamonds from NATO in exchange for the return of the bombs. Spectre also threatens to destroy a major US or UK city if their demands are not met. Bond travels to Nassau after learning that Derval's sister Domino, played by Claudine Auger, lives there. Domino serves as the main Bond girl of the film. Bond meets with Domino and is later introduced to her guardian, who happens to be Largo. After their meeting, Bond also meets Felix Leiter, this time played by Rick Van Nutter. This Felix didn't really leave that much of an impression on me, to be honest. Bond meets many other characters as well, including 2 allies, Pinder and Paula, played by Earl Cameron and Martine Beswick, and even Q. Q rarely shows up in the field in the Bond movies, so it's a welcoming change. Paula is later captured by Largo's henchwoman Fiona Volpe, played by Luciana Paluzzi, and kills herself to avoid questioning. Bond himself is later captured by Volpe, but escapes to a dance club. Bond and Volpe dance while guards surround the area. One of the guards attempts to shoot Bond, but Bond turns the other way and Volpe gets shot instead. That's probably one of the coolest scenes in the entire series. After that, Bond meets up with Domino and tells her that Largo killed her brother. Domino tells Bond where to go to replace one of Largo's henchmen. Domino is later found out to be helping Bond by Largo and is captured. Bond uncovers Largo's plan to destroy Miami Beach, and Felix Leiter calls in the United States Coast Guard to parachute into the area. Bond also helps the Coast Guard in an incredible underwater battle. The Spectre henchmen surrender, but Largo escapes to a ship, the Disco Volante, which still has one of the bombs on board. Bond gets on board and fights Largo. Largo gets the upper hand and is about to shoot Bond when Domino comes from behind and kills Largo with a harpoon. Bond and Domino jump overboard and the ship explodes. A skyhook-equipped airplane rescues them as the credits roll, ending the film. Sean Connery's performance in this film is probably my favorite out of all the Bond films that he's done. He just feels right at home with the character. Adolfo Celli as Largo makes a decent enough villain. He wears an eye patch as a gimmick to look more scary, but he isn't all that great. I don't know if I'd rate him above Goldfinger, but both characters could have been much better. M and Moneypenny have a few short scenes, along with Q, who provides Bond with the usual gadgets. Felix Leiter returns, but doesn't have all that much to do except follow Bond around and babysit Domino. The highlights of the film for me are Domino and Fiona Volpe. These two women have to be two of the hottest women in the world. I mean, wow. Especially Luciana Paluzzi as Fiona Volpe. She also happens to be my favorite henchwoman of the entire series. Claudine Auger as Domino happens to be one of my favorite Bond girls, even if she isn't a strong, independent character. She's just really nice to look at. And I guess you could say she killed the main villain, too. I should also mention that Largo has a henchman by the name of Vargas who has a gimmick of abstaining from alcohol, smoking, and sexual intercourse, proving his devotion as a killer. There's one slight problem. This character gets practically nothing to do in the entire film. I guess his main purpose was to make room for Connery's awesome one-liner after getting killed by him. Terrence Young, who directed Dr. No and From Russia with Love, returned to direct this film, and it certainly shows. The polished look of Goldfinger is gone, and we get a more gritty-looking Bond film this time. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion. After all, I love From Russia with Love. One thing I haven't talked about in my previous reviews is the score. John Barry, composer of many, many Bond films in the series, did the score for this one, and boy is it great. Just listen to this track that plays during the pre-title fight. Or this track that plays when Bond is sneaking around the clinic. John Barry's scores would only improve over time. The gun barrel sequence in this film was reshot with Sean Connery doing the sequence this time. Stuntman Bob Simmons was James Bond in the gun barrel openings of Dr. No, From Russia of Love, and Goldfinger. Just a little piece of trivia for you. There are many great action scenes in Thunderball. Like I said before, I love the pre-title sequence in this film. There's also a scene where Bond goes to Largo's island, Palmyra, to attempt to rescue Paula. That was a pretty cool scene. The underwater scenes are very polarizing to fans. Either you love them or hate them. Personally, I thought that the underwater cinematography was exceptional, so I love them. The underwater battle at the end is just epic. The locations are also a big improvement over Goldfinger. Nassau is a beautiful and tropical place and is a pleasure to look at. Fan reaction to Thunderball was mixed at the time of its release. After the grand and bit over-the-top Goldfinger, fans were expecting this film to be much bigger. Those fans were very disappointed. Today reviews for Thunderball are very polarized. I've seen some people say that Thunderball was the worst in the entire series. To that I say, did we see the same movie? Many fans also criticized the film for being too boring. I disagree with that on every level. I friggin' love Thunderball, and even more so than From Russia with Love. And no, I'm not crazy. It's just there's something about this movie that makes it stand out to me. I will be honest and say that From Russia with Love is definitely the better film, and I always have a great time watching that one, but when I watch Thunderball I have a blast. The scenes in Troublins with Bond sneaking around like a real spy along with John Barry's incredible score is just amazing. Also, you can actually see Bond get shaken up after nearly dying on a spinal traction machine. You don't see Bond in danger too many times, but when you do, it's a breath of fresh air. James Bond isn't Superman, he's a spy, and a damn good one at that. Also worth mentioning is Bond actually getting shot in the leg. Yes, he actually gets shot. That sense of vulnerability really makes this film great. I'm also pretty sure that this is the only time in the series that Bond gets shot. If I'm wrong, however, feel free to correct me. Overall, Thunderball is an incredible film, in my opinion anyway. I know a lot of people will disagree with this. There is a good reason that this is my third favorite film in the entire series. It's a really fun film with great Bond girls, action, espionage, suspense, music, the list goes on. I give Thunderball the perfect score it deserves, a 10 out of 10. Like before, I will go over my 5 likes and 5 dislikes because no Bond film is entirely perfect in every category. Let's start with my likes. I liked every scene at the health clinic Shrublands. There's many great suspenseful scenes there. I like Luciana Paluzzi as Fiona Volpe. She steals the show from everyone, including Connery. I like the scenes of Bond in danger. They add a feeling of vulnerability to the character of James Bond. Also like Claudine Auger as Domino. She's great fun to watch. Lastly, I like John Barry's incredible score. Now for my dislikes. Keep in mind most of these are pretty minor and I was grasping at straws to come up with these. First, there could have been more scenes with Fiona Volpe. Second, the underwater scene where Spectre steals the bombs goes on just a little too long. Third, Emilio Largo could have been a much better villain. Felix Leiter could have easily been excluded from this film because he doesn't do much. And lastly, the character of Vargas ends up being a big waste. He doesn't even get to fight with Bond. Those are all pretty minor though. I know that was a bit long, but I have nothing but praise for this film. Next week we will finally see number 1's true identity in the 5th Bond film, You Only Live Twice. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.